In February 202 BC, in the city of Chang'an, Emperor Liu Bang held a state dinner for his ministers. Just as the festivities were getting underway, the emperor's trusted lieutenants began to quarrel and forgot their good manners. Some went so far as to draw their swords while ignoring the fine liquor and delicious food on the tables. Liu Bang was the first commoner to rise to the throne of China, but he had not yet fully established his authority. The emperor knew he had a long way to go to win the obeisance of his subjects. Just 19 years earlier, in 221 BC, Qin Shi Huang had united China. With that, China had entered its imperial age. The feudal fiefdoms ruled by nobles were replaced by a new system of provinces and counties.
"西周一般说是分封制，也叫封建制，那秦以后呢，这种大一统的国家呢，是一种中央集权制，也有人把前面这种叫做王国，把后面这种叫做帝国。
在秦以后，我们通称是郡县制，是他对地方的管理，就皇帝垂直，直接管理地方的。帝制，它是和皇帝制度，皇帝制度的形成有直接关系的，就是一个高度集权的，由中央直接控制地方的这样一个制度。
Unfortunately, the Qin Empire was short-lived. It lasted only 15 years. After the Qin Empire was overthrown in 206 BC, the two forces that jointly overthrew it fought a war of succession. At the beginning of the war, Xiang Yu of the Western Chu had the advantage. He forced Liu Bang's army to fight for its survival with its back against the wall. Three years later, on the eve of a major battle, Liu Bang received a letter from one of his generals demanding more power. This made Liu Bang extremely angry.
"我困在此地，朝夕希望韩信能来救我，但是他却来信要求我封他为代理齐王。"
Liu Bang's councillors viewed the situation somewhat differently.
形势对汉不利，我们也很难禁止韩信称王，不如假戏真做，就立他为代理齐王，使他守住领地。不这样，形势的变化对我们更为不利。
Liu Bang immediately grasped the situation and gave his consent.
大丈夫受封为诸侯，当就当真的王，何必去当代理齐王呢？
And And so he declared Han Xin ruler of Qi.
汉初的异姓王啊，像韩信、彭越啊，他们当年在楚汉战争期间呢，都是刘邦手下的重要将领，手握强兵啊。那么在项羽和刘邦相争的最关键的时候，这些人举足轻重啊。他们如果倒向项羽，项羽会胜啊；倒向刘邦，刘邦会胜。那么在这种情况下，他们要求做诸侯王，那刘邦不能不答应，啊，这最典型的是韩信。
那么他的这个封分的话呢，应该说是迫于当时的一种形势所迫，并不是说是就是一种倒退。他不那么搞，他就不能够消灭自己的这个政治上、军事上的对手项羽。
Han Xin's demand for a fiefdom reflected a practice that was prevalent in pre-Qin China. During the Zhou dynasty, which lasted 800 years from around 1000 BC, China was a vast country in appearance, but was in actuality a patchwork of fiefs that were small states ruled by feudal lords. There were at first 180 such states, but over centuries of wars, there were only 7 left before Qin Shi Huang unified China. Qin Shi Huang was the first emperor in China to abolish the system of fiefdoms. He divided the country into 36 provinces. The governors of the provinces had fixed terms and were directly answerable to the central government. However, what he did was not understood by all government officials at the time. In 214 BC, 7 years after Qin Shi Huang established his empire, Qun Yuye, one of his ministers, made a sensitive political suggestion to the emperor. He suggested that the system of enfeoffment be restored.
臣听说，殷周两朝能够建国1000年，是因为实行了分封制度。子孙作为封国的王，可以辅佐朝廷。而今陛下统一天下，但是子孙都没有封国，一旦有变故，谁能拯救朝廷呢？不去效仿古代而能长久的国家，从来没有听说过。
The emperor ordered his ministers to deliberate on this matter. Prime Minister Li Si was the first to oppose it.
周文王与武王封了许多兄弟子侄为王，但是几代过后，亲情逐渐淡漠，为了利益相互战争，异姓的诸侯更是互相征伐，周天子也不能禁止。今天全国因为陛下的英明终于统一，天下都划分为郡县，皇子以及功臣不必分封，而是享用国家的俸禄。他们因没有权力而无法反叛，这才是安邦定国的好制度。
The emperor endorsed Li Si's viewpoint. The system of enfeoffment clearly ran counter to the goal of centralized power. He could do without it. History records that at the end of the Qin dynasty, massive uprisings broke out led by great men in the 6 states Qin Shi Huang had conquered. These men wanted to restore their fiefdoms. In order to gain wider support, Xiang Yu, the former ruler of Chu, had no choice but to restore the old system. He also established a number of new states, one of which was Liu Bang's state of Han. But then fighting broke out. Both camps had feudal lords who had been granted states by Xiang Yu, and 8 of them sided with Liu Bang. In 202 BC, Liu Bang called together Han, Xin and other feudal lords in his camp and drew up a plan to encircle and ambush Xiang Yu's troops. Liu Bang's councillor Zhang Liang commanded the army to play Chu music the whole night to break the spirits of the Chu troops. After this battle, Xiang Yu committed suicide by cutting his throat, and Liu Bang was finally victorious. The establishment of the Han dynasty was the result of cooperation between Liu Bang and 8 feudal lords. So, at the beginning of the Han dynasty, these 8 lords all had very large fiefdoms. A map of the time shows 50 provinces, more than 30 of which were granted as fiefs to the 8 feudal lords who followed Liu Bang in the war. Only 15 of the provinces were effectively under the control of the central government. These feudal lords all had their own private armies. Their lands were states within a state.
春秋战国的时候，虽然是诸侯分封了，但是他这个分封的最早的依据，它是从西周来的。秦始皇改变了这种现实，完全用君先制来替代分封制。这当然它是一种政治制度建设上的一种革命性的一种举措，但是呢，清朝很快的就土崩瓦解了，也就是说它的暴政或者其他种种原因导致了它很快的失败。那人们就想了，这个变革是不是太大了？这个革命的这个力度太大了，所以呢，他们想还是有个平稳的过渡还是应该分封这种形式。
This was a period when the feudal lords were all vying for supremacy. A state councillor by the name of Kuai Tung came up with a stratagem for Han Xin, the ruler of Qi.
"以齐王您的智慧与才干，又拥有精锐的雄兵以及齐燕赵国的地盘，趁此两雄相争之机占据北方，谁能阻挡您的发展呢？我听说，放弃上天给予的机遇会受到老天的惩罚，时机到了没有把握住，会因为优柔寡断而遭殃。愿您能仔细思考我的建议。"
At the time, the feudal lords all had their own armies, and the relationship between the feudal lords and the central government was similar to that during the previous dynasties. As long as there were feudal lords, the Han Empire would never be genuinely united. After nearly 400 years of constant warfare, there was a strong impulse for China to become unified. A very important reason China became unified is that the power brokers acted in accordance with this impulse. But there were also other reasons, naturally. Historians can now look back at those times with 2,000 years of scientific hindsight and get a new perspective. Some historians believe that China's natural geography was a reason for unification. The Yellow River, which nurtured Chinese civilization, was a positive factor in promoting unification. For half a millennium before Qin Shi Huang unified China, there were more than 100 states within the present borders of China. Because there was no unified method for harnessing the Yellow River, the people living along the river frequently suffered catastrophic floods. A river consisting of 5% silt was rarely seen, but the amount of silt the Yellow River carried was 46%. As a result, the riverbed frequently silted up and overflowed its levees, causing extensive flooding. History books record that the ruler of Qi once organized a conference. He wanted the feudal lords along the Yellow River to act together to harness the Yellow River. Simply put, if there isn't a central political power, it is difficult to mobilize resources and assemble the manpower needed to harness the Yellow River. This shows that during the previous 1,000 years, the idea of unifying China was gradually fermenting in the constant battle against the Yellow River. Besides, after nearly 400 years of constant warfare, people universally welcomed a life of peace and security. The first person to raise the issue of unifying all of China was Mencius. He stated that all of China must be united under one ruler. He felt that only when China was a single country would it be possible to eliminate war and welcome peace. This was the first occurrence of the expression grand unification in Chinese literature. The new emperor Liu Bang didn't seem capable of achieving this great aim, but he had to go on the attack against the feudal lords just to hold on to the throne and eradicate the forces attempting to carve up the country. The Empress Lu Zhi and the Prime Minister Xiao He were also keenly aware of the potential threat to the central government coming from the feudal lords. Something had to be done, and quickly. Of the 8 feudal lords, the one they feared most was Han Xin. The 3 of them quickly agreed on a plot to eliminate him. It was at this time Liu Bang received a letter reporting that Han Xin was preparing to rise in rebellion. This was all the pretext the emperor needed to put this plot into action, so Liu Bang called a military conference and all his generals were eager for battle. However, Liu Bang's counselor Qian Ping disagreed.
陛下的士兵比楚王韩信的士兵如何？
比不上。
陛下手下的大将有没有人比韩信更有军事头脑？
差得太远。
如今兵不如楚军，而将又比不上韩信。我们发兵去攻打他们，是把战争当成儿戏啊！我认为陛下的处境很危险。
你有什么好办法呢？
韩信听说陛下喜欢游玩，他一定会推掉事务到郊外去迎接您。拜见的时候，陛下擒住他，只需要一个大力士，就把事情完成了。
So Liu Bang notified all his feudal lords that he was going on a hunting trip and ordered all of them to meet him in Quanzhou. Han Xin went to Quanzhou and respectfully waited along the road. When Liu Bang saw Han Xin, he gave a signal to his guards, who quickly snatched him. Han Xin immediately realized his fate.
不需要打鸟的时候，就把好弓收藏起来；兔子死光了，就把猎狗煮了吃掉。如今国家统一，我当然该被煮掉吃了。
The records of the Grand Historian frequently notes that states were eliminated and replaced by provinces. After a state was subjugated by the central government, its lands were turned into a province and administered by an official directly answerable to the emperor. But in point of fact, Qin Shi Huang wasn't the first to come up with the idea of eliminating the system of enfeoffment and replacing it with the system of provinces and counties. During the Warring States period, the states of Jin and Zhu used the system of provinces and counties. During this period of constant warfare, far-sighted rulers searched for methods other than enfeoffment to rule their territories.
这个郡县制的出现呢，是在春秋时代，其中县又更早一些，郡的出现略晚一些，那么县的这个形成呢，这种制度的设立呢，主要是在兼并战争中出现的，比如这个楚国和秦国都是这样，他们兼并四周的小国，每灭掉一个小国呢，就把这个地方变成一个县，然后由国君派出官吏去进行管理。 那么原来的这个小国就消失了。
The system of provinces and counties was a new model of government. Following the reform of the imperial bureaucratic system, there were 3 councillors of state with 9 ministers. The 3 councillors of state were the Prime Minister, the Supreme Military Commander, and the Deputy Prime Minister, who was responsible for investigating all the officials, including the Prime Minister himself. Below them were the 9 ministers, who were responsible for administering all the state's affairs. The first Prime Minister of the Han Dynasty was Xiao He, who came from Liu Bang's home county and was the emperor's most trusted subordinate. This famous Prime Minister was an expert at organization and administration, and Liu Bang had a very subtle relationship with him. In 203 BC, when Liu Bang and Xiang Yu were still fighting for supremacy, Xiao He was Liu Bang's rear area commander, supplying him with fresh troops and supplies. On several occasions, Liu Bang sent emissaries to inquire after Xiao He's well-being, and he felt rather good about it. However, a councillor by the name of Bao Sheng told Xiao He not to be complacent.
汉王刘邦正在征战，吃不好睡不暖，但是数次派使者来慰问您，这是怀疑您呐。我为您设想了一个办法，不如将您的兄弟子侄都送到汉王的军营里，汉王一定更加信任您。
Xiao He took his advice. He quickly sent all the able-bodied young men in his family to the front lines. In name, they were soldiers, but in truth, they were hostages. Xiao He's loyalty won Liu Bang's favor. The incidents showed the state of mind of the new emperor. Externally, he eliminated the system of enfeoffment. Internally, he established a bureaucratic system suitable for administering an empire. In this way, the emperor could hold absolute power. A decade later, Han Xin could still not live out his remaining days in peace. Liu Bang was now away from his court, fighting a war. His wife and his prime minister hatched a plot to have Han Xin killed. Later, Liu Bang seized Han Xin's counselor and learned that he was a loyal general after all.
汉王对我情深意重，把他的乘车送给我，把他的衣服送给我，把他的食物送给我。我听说接受马车及衣物的人要帮人排忧解难，接受食物馈赠的人要为人去死。我怎么能因为向往利益而放弃信义呢？
It shows that when Liu Bang was in his greatest difficulties, his most powerful general did not betray him. The Han dynasty was just beginning to flourish around 200 BC, and the question of how to eliminate fiefdoms and change government models became a burning issue. It was to dominate China's long dynastic history. At a time when great historic changes were occurring, even heroes like Qin Shi Huang were forced to become seekers of knowledge who groped for an answer by trial and error. In 196 BC, an imperial envoy rushed to the capital of the Principality of Huainan to tell its ruler Yingbu that Han Xin and Peng Yue, the rulers of Huayin and Liang, had been killed. This news greatly shocked Yingbu. Once an emperor secured his position, the lives of his trusted lieutenants would be in danger. This was exactly what Han Xin's counselor had predicted. Clearly, Liu Bang was not taking any chances with lords and chiefs from outside his family. Yingbu, who always acted firmly, decided to immediately raise an army. He won the first battle against the Han army and crossed the Huai River and marched toward Chu. Of all his generals, Liu Bang feared Han Xin the most. but he feared Yingbu, a brave and able general, nearly as much. Even though he was very ill, he had no alternative but to go to the front and lead the army himself. Liu Bang's arrival at the front changed the situation there entirely. He defeated Yingbu, who led his army south. His movements indicated he was heading toward the Principality of Changsha, the territory of Wu Qian, the last remaining general from outside the Liu clan. If the two of them were to rebel together, Liu Bang and the Han Empire would be faced with a long war. What happened next could not be found in any historical records until a fortuitous archaeological discovery many centuries later. In the autumn of 1971, the discovery of a Han Dynasty tomb near Changsha created a worldwide sensation. This was because the body of a woman was discovered. It had hardly decomposed at all, its flesh still retaining its elasticity. Further archaeological research revealed that this was the 2,000-year-old corpse of the wife of Prime Minister Li Tang. The Han central government conferred the title of Marquis on Li Tang after Yingbu's rebellion had been quelled. This means he must have played an important role in these events. History records that in October 195 BC, Wu Qian, the ruler of Changsha, sent a secret emissary to the defeated Yingbu, inviting him to Changsha to replenish his army and fight again. Yingbu was not at all surprised by the offer because his wife was Wu Qian's sister. In light of this relationship, he expected to receive help if he lost and to share the spoils if he won. What he didn't know was that Wu Qian sided with the central government. Wu Qian then sent his army to ambush and kill Yingbu as he entered Changsha territory. On the basis of numerous funerary objects found in the tomb, historians have concluded that Li Tang played an important role in the murder of Yingbu. He took a risk, persuading his master to forsake family ties to save the new state. Not long after this, Li Tang was made a marquis, which was the highest honor the Han court could confer on him. The extraordinary embalming technique enables us to see the face of Li Tang's wife. This woman was a witness to those events, and perhaps she remembered how she and her husband lived through those dangerous times. The Han Dynasty had now entered its 12th year. All of the rulers from outside the Liu clan, except Wu Qian of Changsha, had been eliminated. Liu Bang, the coarse, wily commoner who rose to the throne, finally achieved his dream of centralizing power after 11 years of bloody fighting. It's natural to assume that Liu Bang should have followed Qin Shi Huang's example and completely replaced fiefdoms with provinces and counties. But he took another path and set up a system that combined the two systems, in which the only people to whom he granted fiefs were members of his own clan. And they were called clan states. Liu Bang's decision to restore fiefdoms was deeply influenced by the times. He had personally witnessed the collapse of the Qin Empire, and he constantly reflected on the lessons of its demise. About 10 years earlier, when he was just one of a number of heroes revolting against the Qin, there were 3 southern provinces, namely Nanhai, Guilin, and Xiang. Because they were far from the capital and divided from it by a range of mountains, they were relatively peaceful. At a place in present-day Panyu, the local military commander Ren Xiao, who was near death, called his trusted confidant Zhao Tuo to his side.
秦国不施仁政，天下处于水深火热之中。项羽与刘邦居中起兵，争夺天下。番禺有五岭作为天险，南至大海，有数千里的土地。这个地方便于割据偏安，可以建立一个国家，
可以立国。
我一定遵从您的命令。
Zhao Tuo closed the roads, raised an army to defend its territory, and established an independent state. The lesson Liu Bang learned from the demise of the Qin Empire was that if an emperor didn't grant fiefs to members of his clan, then when the emperor encountered difficulties, local officials would not come to his aid, but instead let him perish. This particular state had one of the largest private armies during the Qin dynasty. Yet in times of need, it did not come to the emperor's aid. This was a deep lesson for Liu Bang.
那么在这种情况下，刘邦就不愿意重蹈覆辙啊，重新再犯同样的错误。一个人不能，一生当中不能2次踏到同一条河流，所以呢，他想来想去，还是自己的人最可靠。这个同姓刘姓，因为有血缘关系亲不亲这个是身上都流淌的流失的鲜血液，所以呢，在这种情况下，异姓王是不能再分封了已经分封的都千方百计取缔了，那为什么还要重新再去走回头路呢？
In the war to eliminate Yingbu, a young general named Liu Bei impressed Liu Bang with his courage under fire. He was Liu Bang's nephew, and his ability stood out above other members of the clan. In order to strengthen his rule, Liu Bang decided to name this brave warrior ruler of Wu, whose people were known for being fierce. Liu Bang got his first close look at his nephew during the conferring ceremony, and he regretted making this grant as soon as he saw how harsh and cruel Liu Bei appeared. But it was too late, so he patted Liu Bei on the back to feel him out.
汉后
有预言说，50年后汉的东南会有叛乱，难道会是你吗？请你信守天下同姓为一家的誓言，小心不要造反。
我绝不敢。
Liu Bang suddenly realized that relying so heavily on members of one's own clan might not be the best way to ensure the long-term stability of his empire. In 1968, a massive tomb dating from the Han Dynasty was discovered in Hebei province. It was the tomb of Liu Shang, the great-great-great-grandson of Liu Bang. He was one of the feudal lords of what we called the state of Zhongshan. The tomb is the largest of its kind yet discovered in China. The tomb chamber was made by digging a cave in a cliff wall. Using the primitive technology of the time, it is estimated that it would have taken 10,000 men 10 years to complete it. The state of Zhongshan was far removed from the center of civilization. For Liu Shang to be able to construct this massive tomb, he must have had considerable economic resources. The feudal princes of the Liu clan had grown to be very powerful, just as Liu Bang had feared.
我们讲，最大的问题还是一个利益的分割问题，权力的追逐的问题。利益面前，哪怕是兄弟，哪怕是说不指直，他最后核心就是对利益的追逐。他的同姓王诸侯，他是不愿意把自己原来拥有的权利轻易的交出去。 不但不想交出去，甚至还想强化他自己的相对的独立性和割据性，这个就是跟中央政府就发生了尖锐的矛盾。
In the year 177 BC, a sensational case occurred in the capital. It revolved around the emperor's brother, Liu Chang. Liu Chang was paying a visit to the Duke of Beiyang. When the Duke came out to greet him, Liu Chang took out an iron bar hidden in his sleeve and smashed in the Duke's head, and then ordered his bodyguards to slit his throat. Following this, Liu Chang went to the palace, kowtowed to his brother the emperor, and begged for clemency.
我为天下百姓杀死了罪臣毕阳侯，也为我母亲报了仇。我伏倒在阙下，请陛下给我治罪。
The killing was a personal vendetta of Liu Chang's. He didn't go to the emperor to redress his grievance, but brazenly murdered a high official. It was the first such case in Han Dynasty history. A senior official named Yuan Ang gave the emperor his counsel.
诸侯王如果过于骄纵，必然会生祸患。可以因为这件事适当的削去他的封地。
Yuan Ang didn't seek to solve this problem from a legal standpoint. His primary concern was that the state chiefs had become too powerful, and he wanted to use this opportunity to strip Liu Chang of part of his lands. In the end, the emperor followed the advice of another minister to curb the power of all of the state chiefs. His idea was that when a state chief died, he would divide his lands equally among all his sons, thereby decreasing their power generation by generation. This plan was obviously intended to curb their powers, and it put the state chiefs on the alert. In 154 BC, a top-secret meeting was held in the capital at which the emperor discussed the pros and cons of curbing the state chief's powers. Foremost among those present was his trusted advisor, Qiao Cuo.
如今削藩也会反，不削藩也会反。迅速削藩，使诸王措手不及，还是小祸。如果不削藩，给他们时间准备，就是心腹大患了。
In the end, the emperor accepted Qiao Cuo's suggestion. Liu Bei, the ruler of Wu, and Liu Wu, the ruler of Chu, were the biggest troublemakers among the state chiefs. Liu Bei was also the most powerful among them all. His kingdom covered 53 counties. The state of Wu possessed abundant copper resources, and Liu Bei personally supervised the development of the copper industry. He minted his own coins, and his state was the most powerful state in the Han Empire. The state of Chu was also very powerful, and Liu Wu was very domineering. He never followed the orders of the central government and caused the court endless headaches. And so the central government decided to reduce the area of their control. As soon as this imperial edict was announced, the political situation throughout the country grew tense. Then, Qiao Cuo's father rushed to the capital. His son, who had a bright career, was unaware of his father's mood.
皇帝刚刚即位，你作为朝廷重要的执政官员，提出削减诸侯的土地，挑拨攻击刘氏诸王，大家纷纷议论，多数人都对你抱有怨恨。你为什么这么做呢？
政局原本就是这样，我不这么做，天子不被诸侯尊崇，国家社稷都会不安。
刘氏的天下安定了，而我们曹氏一族危险了。我死后，你也难自保啊！
Zhao's father then took out a vial of poison and drank it. A few weeks later, Wu, Chu, and 5 other states rose up in insurrection. Liu Bei was simply not willing to have his lands stripped from him. He killed the imperial envoy and then raised an allied army together with the states of Chu, Zhao, and several others. He conscripted all males over 14 years old and led an army of 200,000 in an attempt to overthrow the central authorities. The year is 154 BC. Liu Bei, the ruler of Wu, was unwilling to let the emperor strip any of his lands from him, so he killed the imperial envoy and raised an allied army together with the states of Chu, Zhao, and others. He conscripted all able-bodied males over 14 years old and led an army of 200,000 to fight the troops of the central government. Coincidentally, 42 years earlier, just after Liu Bang had granted the state of Wu to Liu Bei, he foresaw future problems and regretted his decisions. When news of the rebellion reached the capital, it shook the court. However, Cao Tuo thought this was a golden opportunity. He went to the Prime Minister in hopes of getting rid of his hated rival minister Yuan Ang.
这个袁盎收受了吴王很多金钱，专为吴王隐瞒欺骗，总是宣称吴王不会造反。而今吴王真的反了，请治袁盎通敌之罪。
The Prime Minister refused Cao Tuo's request because he didn't have any proof. And it wasn't long before Yuan Ang heard about it. In February 154 BC, the rebel army defeated the forces of the central government, capturing one town after another. It didn't look good for the emperor. Because Yuan Ang had once been the Prime Minister of Wu, the Emperor Jing asked him for advice. Yuan Ang said he had a plan.
有什么计策？
请您将左右退下。我所说的话，除了天子，别人都不能听。
So the emperor ordered Cao Tuo to leave.
吴楚两王的造反口号是诛杀小人晁错，他们只想得到原有的封地。如今只有杀掉晁错，派使臣赦免吴楚七王的罪行，恢复中央削去的封地，这样可以兵不血刃地退兵。
The emperor thought long and hard.
如果的确如你所说，我不能因为一个人而祸及天下。
我也没有什么良策，请陛下再仔细斟酌。
Eventually, the emperor had Cao Tuo killed when he was on his way to court. He had no idea his life would end like this. On the battlefront, General Zhou Yafu led the government army to face the main force of the rebels. The general built a strong line of defense and wore the enemy down. Then, the general dispatched a contingent to cut off the enemy's supply lines. This, more or less, determined the outcome of the war. Liu Bei was killed during his army's retreat, and Liu Wu committed suicide. The tomb of Liu Wu has been discovered on Lion Hill, Xuzhou in Jiangsu province, and it has been restored. The tomb provides historians with clues concerning the power struggle that took place more than 2,000 years ago. The terracotta soldiers and horses seem to have been placed here without proper order. This group of soldiers is oriented strangely. This group is a mixture of archers and foot soldiers, hardly in battle formation. Historians now believe there's a reason for this. When Liu Wu killed himself, his loyal subordinates had to bury him quickly before orders forbidding a formal burial were received from the central government. Liu Wu's last wish was to have a fitting burial. In 144 BC, the emperor took advantage of his victories in war to issue an imperial decree revoking much of the powers of state rulers, especially their power to appoint and remove officials. The state rulers were now dependent on salaries from the court, and this meant they could no longer play a role in government, making them nobles in name only. It took the Han Dynasty 50 years to consolidate central power, and after much difficulty, the imperial army was finally victorious. China was finally united under an emperor after a series of fits and starts. However, the people's hopes that all of China would be governed by a unified government and ruled by a single voice increased steadily. There are many factors affecting the rise and fall of dynasties. However, an invariable rule is that there must be stability before there can be development. After the Han government completed the centralization of power, the conditions were ripe for economic development on a large scale. This was when the empire began to flourish. In 194 BC, the Empress Dowager Lu Zhi called an emergency meeting of her ministers in the capital. An envoy handed her a letter from Mo Du, the chief of the nomadic Xiongnu Empire. The letter stated, "I have heard that the great Han Emperor Liu Bang has just passed away and that you are a widow living alone. This can't be very pleasant for you. It so happens that I am also single. Why don't you marry me now?" The flippant state letter terrified the officials, and Lu Zhi asked her ministers for advice. General Fan Kuai responded forcefully.
我愿带着10万精兵横扫匈奴的国境。
樊哙这个人应该杀掉。
Ji Bu, another general, had an entirely different opinion.
当年高帝刘邦率领40万大军出击匈奴，反而被匈奴兵围困于平城。今天樊哙怎么可能以10万人马横扫匈奴呢？这是当面说大话。
Liu Ju, who was the de facto ruler, showed her excellent diplomatic skills. She sent a reply to Mordu in which she wrote, "I have already grown old and have lost most of my hair and all of my teeth. So I will select a few beautiful virgins and send them to serve you instead." This little drama occurred in 194 BC, just 8 years after the founding of the Han Dynasty. The letter from Mordu was very confrontational, and the Han court had no alternative but to swallow this insult silently. But in point of fact, it was in a very difficult situation. Historians estimate the population of China at the time dropped to just 20 to 30% of what it had been at the end of the Warring States period, and that only about 15 million people survived the chaos of those times. There were vast tracts of land where no traces of human life could be found.
刘邦到这个曲沃去，说曲沃这个人口啊不剩1/3，就是大部分人都死了，哎，那么这个其他各地的情况也差不多，经济凋敝到什么程度呢？说皇帝啊找不着这个4匹一个颜色的马来驾车，那么那些将军还有相，有的是只能坐牛车，就是可见就是说。经济凋敝很厉害，所以说人相食，就是说人吃人。
Victory or defeat in war depends greatly on the economic strength of the warring sides. It was obvious the Han government wanted to defeat the Xiongnu, but the country was too weak to face such a powerful enemy. "75 years after Empress Liu wrote her letter to Mordu, General Huo Qubing was ordered to take on the Xiongnu. The Han army killed over 70,000 Xiongnu soldiers and won a complete victory. Afterwards, General Huo conducted a series of rituals on the Kenti Mountains, where he climbed a high mountain and worshipped Lake Baikal before leading his troops back to China. At this time, the Han army was beginning to grow stronger, controlling vast regions to the north. It also established 4 provinces in the eastern parts of the empire, while bringing southern states into the fold. The extent of the empire's lands and its power were greater than ever before. In just 75 years, the Han Empire went from being a poor and weak country suffering the ravages of war to being one of the most powerful countries on earth. This enormous transformation fascinates historians. But just what was the mechanism and motive force of its rise? In December 1983, workers from a brick kiln were mining clay from a hill outside Jinzhou. In the process, they discovered an ancient tomb. The discovery brought to light one of the most important documents from the Han Dynasty, known as Laws of the Second Year. This 2,000-year-old document, recorded on bamboo slips, revealed what really happened. The laws showed, in no uncertain terms, that the government under Empress Liu used legal procedures to grant lands to all the country's subjects.
2000户律的规定呢，它就是说，主要是根据等爵的不同，然后可以占有不同数量的田宅。它规定呢，就是公族15庶人这样一个群体，它可以占有1顷田，1宅。所谓的1宅，应该就是那个9小亩，1顷田是100亩。然后根据你的爵位、族籍的增加，
农民从国家那儿得到了土地，那么他还有要尽相应的义务，比如要交纳田租，要服徭役，要服兵役，这都是和这个土地相关的。
Historical records give a vivid portrait of Empress Liu. This woman was said to be very thorough in thought and decisive in action, but she was also cold-hearted and cruel. In 196 BC, while the emperor was on a military expedition, she conspired with the prime minister to have one of the generals killed right in the imperial palace. After the emperor died, she assumed absolute power, and her orders were followed without question, just as if they had come from the emperor. However, she responded to the provocations of the Xiongnu with forbearance, because at the beginning of the Han Dynasty, China was too weak to go to war with the Xiongnu. The laws of the second year appeared at an important juncture in Chinese history. The system of land grants in the household laws was a continuation of a system that had been developed in the various states during the Warring States period. Back then, the princes of the various states were their actual rulers, even though in name the states belonged to the emperor. Historical records show that in the Warring States period, the rulers of these states gave land to the masses.
“授田制”是战国时期形成的，并且被普遍的实行。其中呢，关东国家，特别是中原地区这些国家，实行的更早一些。秦国呢稍微晚一些。关东国家实行授田制，有一个过程啊，主要是这个各国纷纷废除井田制以后，开始实行授田制。有人主张这是土地国有制。既然是由国家授田嘛，这个土地应该是由国家控制的。中国古人没有后代的这种所有权的概念。如果我们用这个概念来套古代的话呢，授田制可能更接近这个土地国有制。但是土地一旦授给了农民，往往不再收回。所以久而久之呢，事实上会发展成一种这个出现土地的私有化。
In other words, the laws of the second year was a continuation of the system of land grants established in the Warring States period, in which land was distributed by the central government. This kind of distribution already had an implicit political significance that the land belonged to the person who ploughed it. Compared to the brief period of the Qin dynasty, the Han dynasty's rule was long and stable, so the transfer of land to the masses under this system was steadily carried out. After Empress Liu died, the government progressively lowered land tax to about 3%. In addition, tax was reduced from 120 coppers per head to 40. Although this was still a heavy burden on the peasants, it was the lowest tax rate imposed on people in ancient times. As a result of this policy, the people's enthusiasm for production increased by leaps and bounds, and stimulated by the policy of land ownership and low taxes, the country's wealth increased many times over. Decades later, the country was rich enough to support a war against the Xiongnu. There is perhaps nothing wrong with this kind of explanation, but constant progress in archaeology has given us additional perspectives to understanding the past. In April 2002, an archaeological team from Hunan began excavation of a site along the banks of the Youshui River. Soon, a discovery was made in an ancient well that astonished the archaeological world. A total of 36,000 bamboo slips were found, and there were over 30,000 characters on them. Historians believe that its importance for research on the Qin dynasty is second only to Qin Shi Huang's terracotta warriors. The archaeological find confirmed much that was known about the Qin dynasty and expanded it greatly.
秦商鞅变法的时候，他对土地制度确实进行了一个重大的改革。他的改革，一方面就是他是把爵位和土地制度结合起来，形成这样一个以爵位民田宅的制度，就是说你爵位越高，你可占有的或者说国家授给你的土地和房屋越多。这是秦商鞅变法的一个重要的一个变化。
Later, the state of Qin strictly employed a system under which the amount of land granted to a warrior and the title he was given was based on his exploits in battle.
所以秦国的军功制，它的军功爵制，它的核心就是鼓励这些战士当然人员老百姓去战场上去杀敌杀敌，你杀敌越多，那么功劳越大，那么你得到的待遇越多，所以它是配套的。你的住100平米，还是住200平米，还是做别墅，就根据你的功劳。
The state of Qin followed a harsh policy focused on farming and war. Everyone was both a peasant and a soldier. The only way a person could rise in rank was through military exploits. Although no law clearly stipulated that land was privately owned, after the state instituted the system of land grants, the practice of selling land slowly developed. So, whenever the Qin army faced the army of one of the other 6 states, the Qin soldiers attacked their enemy like tigers. They cut off the heads of the enemies they killed and strung them around their waists to serve as evidence of exploits upon which their rewards would be based. This was the main way they had to improve their lives. History records that Qin soldiers sometimes fought each other over an enemy's head. The other 6 states had similar policies of rewarding soldiers, but there is no evidence that explicitly states that they had a policy that directly linked farming and war. Historical records do contain reports of land sales in the other 6 states, but not enough to be of major significance. The records of the Grand Historian reports that a military officer in the state of Zhao frequently made an inspection tour of his estates. Another book also has references to private property. The sale of houses and farmland was already quite common. In the Warring States period, all the states strove to adapt to the privatization of land, and people could improve their lives through labor or business. But the state of Qin did more. It linked land ownership with military exploits, and because of this, the Qin's military prowess was much greater than that of the other states. It took only 10 years for Qin to unite the country. In 221 BC, Qin Shi Huang initiated the Age of Monarchy. He was a man of great talent and bold vision, and he thought he had created a unique empire that would last forever. He built the Great Wall in the north and the Lingqiu Canal in the south. He also built a highway system connecting the various parts of the country. He forced the Qin way of thinking and lifestyle on the other 6 states. He relied on military force and forced his own vision onto the world as he saw it. But he could not have imagined that just 3 years after he died, Liu Bang would lead his victorious peasant army to occupy the Qin capital Xianyang and rename it Chang'an. How was it possible for the previously invincible Qin army to suffer total defeat?
Qin 的灭亡的原因，很多学者都共同认为啊，它有一个就是繁刑重练这样子一个行政表现，刑法非常严酷，向民众的征收的这个物资数量非常惊人，特别是徭役的负担啊，使得这些农民们离开了他的土地，整个社会的这个生产秩序被打乱了。这个农耕我们知道，这个农忙的时候，劳动力离开田地呢是非常可怕的事情。他征用的这个劳力啊，数量是可以说数以百万计的。
In the year 125 BC, a young scholar by the name of Sima Qian began his travels to collect materials for his book. He started from the capital and he traveled throughout the country. He noticed that wherever he went, he could see people working busily. As a historian, he quickly drew the conclusion that when the country is bustling with activity, everyone prospers. Sima Qian wrote, "Everyone is born with the impulse to better their lives. People are willing to sacrifice everything, even to gamble their lives, to satisfy their desires." However, after Qin Shi Huang unified China, he did not make a great effort to improve people's lives. Time and again, his tyranny ran counter to people's longing to improve their lives. So the foundation of his empire collapsed. The collapse of the Qin dynasty must have made a deep impression on the Han rulers. In 186 BC, the government carried out total economic reform and gave land to individuals. it did not impose any regulations prohibiting the sale of land, thereby tacitly recognizing private ownership of land. The Laws of the Second Year was a continuation of the reform of the land system begun in the Warring States period, and it completely dismantled the outdated 9 squares system. These laws brought about the rapid development of private land ownership. The policy of giving peasants land and reducing their corvée and tax burden stirred the hearts of the masses. It was soon to prove that the Chinese nation, which highly values hard work and thrift, has an enormous capacity to create wealth. In the 40 years after the adoption of the land distribution policy, the country's population doubled and the people steadily became more prosperous. The government had such massive grain reserves that it had to start storing grain out in the open air. The people raised so many horses that herds of them roamed free in unpopulated areas. People competed so much to show off their wealth that no one was willing to show his face in public riding a mare. Historians consider this period as one of the 3 golden ages of Chinese history. However, this romantic picture was not backed up by evidence until a fortuitous discovery in 1971, which changed our understanding of those times. In 1971, a 2,000-year-old tomb was discovered at Mawangdui in Hunan province. The occupant of the tomb was Lady Dai, the wife of the Prime Minister of the Principality of Changsha during the reign of Emperor Wen of the Han Dynasty. From the tomb, we can get a glimpse of the country's prosperity at that time. This silk painting from the tomb depicts several hundred people on horseback or riding in carriages on a grand outing. This silk cap weighs only 25 grams and seems to be as light as smoke. It shows the heights the textile arts had reached. One of the most interesting objects is the set of gymnastics graphics, which reflects the positive mental attitude of the people of those times. The site was not in the most prosperous part of the empire, but the funerary objects are still quite dazzling. If we could go back in time and visit a flourishing Chinese city, or even better, get a glimpse of the capital, what would it be like? When Emperor Wu took the throne in 129 BC while still in his youth, he looked at the great wealth of his country and decided to launch a war against his powerful neighbor, the Xiongnu. By 119 BC, in the course of 11 years of bitter fighting, the Han army killed more than 220,000 enemy soldiers and took a vast stretch of land. This was the pinnacle of the Han Dynasty's power. Today, as we look back on the Han Empire, we can rely on the great discoveries of archaeological research and use advanced economic theory to explain the rise of the dynasty. Apparently, this brilliant period was ushered in by a primitive free economy. The beginning of greatness of the Han Empire can be traced back to a movement of land reform. In 119 BC, the emperor ordered two of his generals, Wei Qing and Huo Qubing, to make a long expedition to the northern desert to attack the Xiongnu. General Wei Qing led his troops far beyond the Han Empire's borders and engaged the main force of the Xiongnu. He attacked the Xiongnu with 5,000 cavalry, and the Xiongnu met him with 10,000 cavalry. The two armies fought bitterly, with neither side getting the upper hand. But then a fierce windstorm arose, turning the sky dark. Wei Qing grasped the opportunity and ordered his two wings to outflank the enemy. The Xiongnu suffered total defeat, and the Han army killed more than 19,000 Xiongnu troops. Meanwhile, General Huo Qubing led his troops to attack another Xiongnu army, and the two armies immediately locked in a fierce battle. When it was over, the Han army had killed over 70,000 enemy troops. The Han army won victory after victory. The balance between the two empires was changing, and the Han Empire gradually moved from a position of relative weakness to one of strength. The emperor did not know that his enormous empire was undergoing a period of warm weather. Even though his country was able to grow 2 crops a year, he could not maintain that level of military expenditure for long. After the military campaign of 119 BC, the government simply did not have the economic power to fight more wars.
从战国到西汉，应当是确实是一个温暖期。当时是，年平均气温比现在大概要高2度左右。植物它生长的这个生长区的北界向北推进呢是有重要意义，据说差1度就要差好几百公里呢。就是这个气候的条件，对于这个王朝的兴盛，是有好处的。特别是在北部边疆，看一下这个整个中国古代的历史啊，就是温暖期的时候，往往都是中原文化向北推进的这样的时代。
To raise money to pay military expenses, the court ordered the rich to make contributions to the state. However, despite repeated calls from the government, very few people made voluntary contributions. Just at this time, a rich man known as Bu Shi came forward and said he was willing to give half his wealth to the government. This surprising turn of events captured everyone's attention. The emperor ordered an emissary to investigate.
你打算当官吗？
我从小就是个牧羊人，不习惯官宦仕途，不愿意当官。
家里有冤情吗？是否想用捐款达到伸冤的目的呢？
我从小就与世无争，乡里人如果贫穷，我就借钱给他们；如果作恶，我就耐心教导他们。大家都尊重我，我哪有什么冤情呢？
如果是这样，你这样做为什么呢？
当今天子讨伐匈奴，我认为深明大义的人都应该出力，有钱的人应当捐钱。大家都这么做的话，匈奴就会灭亡了。
When the emissary returned to the capital, he reported his conversation to the emperor, who thereupon asked his prime minister for his opinion.
不是的做法不计人情，超出常规的人与事儿不能作为奖赏的依据，希望陛下不要奖赏他。
The Prime Minister believed that since no one except Bushi was willing to donate money, Bushi had to have some ulterior motive. Eventually, the Emperor did not pursue the matter further, but the fact that there was only one person in the whole empire who was willing to donate money for the war disturbed him deeply. In time, a phenomenon occurred that had never before happened in Chinese history. The gap between the rich and the poor gradually widened. A small number of people had become so wealthy that they were richer than many of the nobles. Bushi was one of them. Bushi was very skillful at raising livestock. In less than 20 years, he had increased his herd of sheep from a couple of dozen to more than 1,000. Meanwhile, another man from Sichuan province owned and operated an iron ore mine. He employed more than 1,000 servants and lived in luxury. Shi Shi, a native of Shanxi, started out as a peddler, but he wasn't afraid of hard work and gradually accumulated great wealth. It's said he was so wealthy, he wouldn't have been able to spend it all in several lifetimes. To peasants who had always tilled a small plot of land, new occupations like sheep herding, mining and retail business presented new paths by which a person could become rich through hard work. In the middle of the Han Dynasty, small private businesses underwent explosive growth. Rapid economic growth had a deep effect on social life, but histories from the times do not discuss this issue. However, the great development in archaeology in the past century has brought to light many unimaginable discoveries. In 121 BC, after a bitter war with the Xiongnu, the Han army had gained effective control of the Juyan Lake region, which became the northernmost outposts along the boundless Gobi Desert. Here, archaeologists have found numerous bamboo slips which tell the following story. A fishmonger arranged with the outpost commander to sell fish. They sold more than 5,000 fish in a single transaction. This is a surprisingly large number. Other Han Dynasty bamboo slips from the region record large volume sales of lumber and liquor. This shows that trade was flourishing even in the most remote parts of the empire. When the young emperor ascended the throne, the Han Dynasty was just entering a period of rapid development in the handicraft industries. To understand the historical reasons for this, we have to look back another 100 years to the end of the Qin dynasty. After Qin Shi Huang unified the whole country, he instituted a policy of supporting agriculture and suppressing small businesses. He set up state monopolies for essential goods and services under government control, and he kept private businesses from growing too large. At the beginning of the Han Dynasty, in order to encourage economic development, the government opened all the country's rivers and lakes to commercial traffic and allowed the people to engage in all kinds of economic activities. Driven by business profits, private commerce underwent enormous development. The government had always had an uneasy relationship with businessmen. businessmen were believed to have made no economic contribution and just relied on fast talk and their wiles to make money by hoarding and profiteering. They were nothing more than leeches on society. Government officials and the aristocracy also abhorred the lifestyle of the businessmen, who were richer than many nobles. They had no social position or political power, yet lived better than those who did. People with actual position and power were very resentful of this. Let's take another look at Bu Shi's attempt to donate money. This seemingly trivial incident was in fact enmeshed in a complex social situation. Due to the way wealth was distributed in the country, a sharp conflict arose between those who represented the state's interests and the newly rich merchant class. In order to strip rich merchants of their wealth, the emperor adopted a policy of suppressing private businesses. In 119 BC, the emperor issued an edict nationalizing all the mining, smelting, and casting, as well as salt production. From then on, they were all state monopolies from which private capital was excluded. In 119 BC, Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty nationalized the mining, smelting and casting, and salt extraction industries in China. This gave the government a monopoly and prevented private businesses from operating in those areas.
当时商人实际上利益集团，商人他是一个很大的群体啊，他在国计民生当中占有非常重要的位置。他对汉武帝的好多政策他是不满的，特别对汉武帝经济上的这种利出一孔，就是完全是国有经济高度集权的做法，他是不满，因为原来是盐、铁都是可以民间来做的，包括酒啊什么东西啊。都是酒券，它都是由朝廷来控制了，就国计民生、经济命脉了，那么它的活动空间就比较小了。
在汉宣帝的时候，曾经就是君臣进行了大的一个辩论，当时民间的代表就是贤良文学，他们就是当时激烈的抨击汉武帝的盐铁国营政策。而且他认为，就是国营有一个很大的问题，就是它的质量问题，割草不痛，就是说连那个连草都割不动嘛，就是说它那个国营之下所制造的这种铁器质量非常差。
那铁器制的特别大，你像汉武帝时期，现在发现的大铁犁，只能开钩，别的根本就不实用。所以说，那些盐铁论里头那些贤良文学就批评说，你官府造的这个盐铁官员，你造的这铁器啊，根本又动，老百姓根本都割不动。国营的话呢， 他就只能是国老大嘛，他只能他不实用，他造出来的器物，他只是要收钱。
The tremendous impact of government policies on merchants meant there was a lack of reinvestment of private capital. Under these conditions, people began to invest large amounts of capital in land, which was a safe and profitable commodity. Social and economic realities and the government's policies to suppress commerce made land the most lucrative investment in what was an agricultural country. These factors prompted large-scale land acquisitions during the middle period of the Han Dynasty. One of the most respected scholars of its day, Dong Zhongshu, wrote to the emperor saying, "Now the rich have fields as far as the eye can see, while the poor are without even a scrap of land."
西汉从这个文景以后啊，土地兼并开始发展。那么土地兼并呢，会导致大量的小农破产。这些农民破产以后呢，有的会变为佃农啊、雇农啊，有的会沦为奴婢，还有很多人会变成流民，到处逃亡。这样会造成一些社会问题，造成一些不安定因素。那么汉武帝呢，也想解决这个问题。那么兼并势力当中有一种人，就是商人。他们经商挣了钱，然后大量购买土地，所以他们是土地兼并中的一种重要的势力。
According to records of the Grand Historian, in 106 BC, 400,000 landless peasants suddenly appeared in the Central Plains. To the people of that time, having no land was equivalent to losing one's livelihood, and the emergence of 400,000 starving landless peasants closing in on the capital left Prime Minister Shi Qing with no option but to tender his resignation. This was the first time such a thing had happened in Chinese history, and it shocked China's rulers. The government ordered some of the rich and powerful to relocate to less populated regions near the capital. This move would have killed two birds with one stone. On the one hand, it weakened the power of local forces, and on the other, it increased the population in the area surrounding Chang'an. But the emperor hadn't expected his great general Wei Qing to intercede on behalf of one individual.
郭解家境贫穷，不应该在搬迁的范围里。
平民百姓能够让大将军为他上奏，说明他的家不贫穷。
The emperor was obviously very unhappy about this. That a powerful general could unexpectedly plead with him on behalf of a man in the street showed the influence some so-called common people actually had. The person who the general spoke for, Guo Jie, is described in historical records as being extremely ruthless. He killed many people as a young man and gradually grew to become a local tyrant. Many people of influence in his neighborhood were eager to make his acquaintance. On one occasion, someone praised Guo Jie, calling him a chivalrous warrior. However, a Confucian scholar who was present did not agree with this appraisal.
郭解这个人总是钻法律的空子，怎么能成为贤者呢？
The man was later found murdered, with his tongue cut out. Officials summoned Guo Jie who pleaded ignorance of the matter. He was later acquitted. Goryeo became very powerful and he acted with impunity. This attracted the concern of the government, and clearly something had to be done.
Guojie 只是一个百姓，但是有人肯为他卖命，因为一点小事儿就替他杀人。如果说Guojie真不知道这件事，这种情况就更可怕，应当判处死刑。
Consequently, the authorities had Goryeo and his entire family killed. This was an era when despots were emerging in many regions. These despots had huge amounts of money and colluded with officials. They were, in fact, the earliest criminal gangs in Chinese history. The government quickly realized the serious danger these local despots posed to society, and resolved to suppress them using brutal means. Public order in one county in particular was in a terrible state, and so the emperor appointed a new strict chief called Yi Zong. There were more than 200 criminals awaiting execution in the county's prison. Regulations allowed the relatives of such prisoners to visit them prior to their execution. The new chief deployed soldiers to the prison to arrest the relatives of prisoners who came to see them. In total, he arrested over 200 people on the false claim that they intended to help the convicts escape, and then he executed them along with those on death row. Afterwards, the people of the county were gripped by terror and no longer dared to oppose the authorities. In 119 BC, due to the war with the Xiongnu, the government forced all citizens to pay a capital levy of between 3% and 6% of their total assets. However, the authorities quickly discovered that the majority of the propertied class opposed the policy and were concealing assets so as not to pay tax on them.
"推行这个政策，那当然是对于大工商业者、对于大的商人，那是一种很大的一种打击。无非就是把他们的钱来挖到，怎么想方设法的挖到国库里头来，不是把私人财产变成国有财产，就是大概就是这么一个过程。
那商人当然是更不乐意了，所以他们千方百计隐蔽财产。藏富，我们现在是巴不能够上什么无人富豪榜啊，什么福布斯排行榜，那是你看了不能上榜的，上榜的马上就完蛋了啊，最后都要出问题了，千万。所以商人说：“哎呀，哭穷啊，啊，我做生意赔了，你明明有几车货，他说只有1车货，只有半车货，不就偷税漏税吧？就是相当于今天的。”那汉武帝不看的，那我这个钱就收不上来，我上有政策，你下有对策，那当然是很不满意。
In response to this, the emperor came up with a solution that would today be considered unimaginable. Anybody who reported someone for concealing their wealth would receive half of the perpetrator's wealth, and the state would take the other half. This was an historic struggle between the government and landowners, with the government using all the tools at its disposal to seize wealth from society. After this policy was announced, many rich families had their homes searched and went bankrupt. is recorded in the Book of Han that homes were searched across the country and that the middle classes were practically wiped out.
经济上是国家管制呢，还是市场这个调节这个问题？所以当时他们都批评汉武帝管得太死了。管得太死里面就是其中有一个就是率面告面，这个一商太过分了，它带来的后遗症对商业活动的正常开展，这个实际上带来很大的后遗症。但是我们要有同情之理解，毕竟是在战争时期，因为有时候历史的发展就是一种很痛苦的血和生命的代价包括财富损失的代价这种代价是沉痛的代价是往往是历史进步的一种必然的一种没办法避免的一种付出。
In short, the government allocated land to the people and reduced taxes, including head tax. It also encouraged people to set up private businesses and develop the private economy. Within just 50 years, there was great accumulation of wealth in society, and the nation grew stronger. But not long afterwards, the emperor launched a protracted war against the Xiongnu, and this rapidly consumed the wealth of the empire. To meet the huge levels of military spending, the government adopted policies which suppressed merchants in an attempt to garner money from the people and nationalized the salt and iron industries. The government also resorted to violent means such as raiding people's homes to amass wealth from taxes. All this resulted in the collapse of the economy, as well as wealth accumulation in society. Unable to get rich through commerce, people began buying up land. Land became concentrated in the hands of the few, which produced landless peasants and tyrannical landlords. The polarization of wealth became increasingly stark. Towards the end of his reign, the emperor realized how much the war he started had harmed the economy and how some of his excessively harsh methods had exacerbated problems within the empire. He published an article in which he expressed regret for some of his policies. What are the laws governing the rise and fall of empires? Throughout history, no emperor, including Qin Shi Huang and Emperor Wu of Han, were able to uncover the answer to this mystery. It's now the year 3 AD. In the capital Chang'an, officials were working tirelessly in the Prime Minister's office, sorting and counting the seemingly endless boxes of bamboo slips that were arriving. The office had received nearly 500,000 of them. At a time when horses were the primary mode of transportation, a petition written on 500,000 slips of bamboo would have pushed the government's resources to the limit. The petition carried one message expressing the ardent wish of the people, that the government confer the highest honors upon the new commander of the Imperial Guards, Wang Mang. The people's support for Wang Mang was sincere and sometimes even fanatical. The petition quickly evolved into a large-scale demonstration. In the Book of Han, it was recorded that members of the royal family, officials and ordinary citizens alike spontaneously descended on the capital and waited day and night outside the palace gates. The imperial court had no choice but to send out messengers to assure the crowd that the government would immediately confer on Wang Mang the highest awards. And this announcement sent the crowd into rapturous applause. As the people had lost all hope in the Han Dynasty, they thought Wang Mang was the right man for the highest office in the land. In fact, however, the end of the Han Dynasty can be traced back a further 3 decades to the reign of Emperor Cheng, when the empire had already begun to show signs it was faltering. That year, Emperor Cheng issued an imperial edict on crime, in which he confessed to the reasons for there being so many landless peasants in society. He followed this by pointing out society's many problems and blaming corrupt officials for social unrest. According to the Book of Han, the emperor's tutor was a powerful landowner in the Central Plains, where he owned more than 2,500 hectares, all of which was in the most fertile areas on the banks of the Jing and Wei rivers. Top ministers owned huge tracts of land. They were almost as rich as the emperor. They were, in fact, the most powerful men in the empire. The Book of Han states that Emperor Cheng's uncle Wang Li seized several thousand hectares of prime farmland in Nanyang Prefecture, which he then sold to the government, earning him 100 million copper coins. Back then, 1 copper coin could have bought a small bucket of rice. If calculated against the price of rice today, he would have made 240 million yuan. Considering the state of the economy, the purchasing power of 100 million copper coins would have been far greater than 240 million yuan today.
这个家族的其他的子弟也都在朝中担任要职，所以他的子弟当时就飞扬跋扈，这个贪污这个收受贿赂。生活也奢侈挥霍。班固在这方面做了很多具体的描述。他们都建这个自己的宅院这个有的房子建的跟皇宫里的宫殿差不多。
Worse still, following the death of one of the emperor's favorite courtiers, Dong Xian, the government discovered he had amassed a personal fortune of 4.3 billion copper coins. Using even the most conservative conversion rate, today it would be worth around 10 billion yuan. Even more astonishing is that he had only worked in the palace for 4 years and was only 22 years old when he died. For thousands of years, spending on the royal family and officials were the 2 largest expenditures in the government budget. The government itself was an interest group whose money ultimately came from exploited labor. However, society could supply only so much surplus labor, and the government over-exploited the people. This inevitably led to fierce conflict between the haves and the have-nots. Government corruption also caused it to lose its ability to govern. The local tyrants described in history books were the first instance of criminal gangs in Chinese history, and there was little the government could do about them. Yuan Shi was a local tyrant who had supporters across the Central Plains. His power attracted the attention of officials. One day, while his servant was out buying meat, he got into an argument with the butcher. The servant grabbed the butcher's knife and hacked at him before running home. The county chief wanted to use this incident to restore the government's authority. He dispatched troops to arrest Yuan Shi. However, he had underestimated Yuan Shi's power. As they faced each other, a group of local outlaws suddenly appeared that greatly outnumbered the local officials' troops. They wanted the county chief to let Yuan Shi go. Caught in a difficult position, he was unsure what to do. But then, Yuan Shi's men came up with a compromise solution.
yuan shi的奴才犯了罪，但是你也抓不到，不如将他赤裸着上身绑起来，用剑刺穿他的耳朵，到你衙门前请罪，这样你的面子也就保住了。
In the circumstances, the county chief had no choice but to withdraw his troops, and the matter was therefore quietly concluded. But one government official called Wang Yougung felt Yuan Shi was way out of line, and he hoped to bring Yuan Shi to justice.
袁绍手下的刺客众多，杀了人之后都不会出卖袁绍，无法无天。袁绍修建守丧的房屋，排场超过了他的身份。我为您想个办法，不如拆掉他守丧的屋子，逐条上奏他的罪行。这样做后，袁绍就不敢轻举妄动了。
Yuan Shi learned of this and sent assassins to Wang Yougung's home. He ordered the assassins not to ransack the house.
不要惊吓了齐老夫人。
In another room, the assassins killed Wang Yougung and his son. Yuan Shi was China's first gangster, and he had hundreds of killers at his disposal. They were even prepared to kill officials. In the year 22 BC, the commander of the armed forces, Wang Feng, was seriously ill. His nephew, Wang Mang, was at his bedside to care for him night and day. Wang Feng was touched by his nephew's devotion. Just before he passed away, he praised Wang Mang to the emperor, who gave him a minor role as an imperial attendant. He was 24. Wang Mang read all the books he could find and grew to become one of the foremost scholars of his age. At home, he asked his wife to wear simple clothes rather than elaborate dresses. In fact, visitors often mistook Mrs. Wang for one of his servants. Wang Mang and his wife were devoted to each other. He did not take any concubines. In the year 2 BC, Wang Mang earned the great respect of the people when his son caused the accidental death of a family slave. He ordered his son to accept responsibility and commit suicide as penance, despite the fact that it was not considered a serious offense at the time. Wang Mang's achievements quickly spread throughout the empire, and as the dynasty began to crumble, Wang Mang emerged as a saint who, in the minds of the people, was the embodiment of morality and justice. The frenzied acquisition of land by corrupt officials and local tyrants, heavy taxes, and the polarization of rich and poor had led to extreme social unrest. One of the senior officials wrote to the emperor to point out the reasons.
气候变化无常，水灾旱灾频繁，是迫使人民死亡的原因之一。县级官吏严厉地追讨赋税租税是原因之二，贪官污吏假公取私收取贿赂是原因之三，豪强地主对百姓剥削无度是原因之四。 酷吏给百姓强加徭役，人民没有时间种田是原因之五。村里一民谷，不分男女都要上街追捕盗贼是原因之六。强盗劫取百姓财物是原因之七。百姓有7种死法，而没有一条生路。希望国家安定，真是太难了。
Corruption among the ruling classes, the weakening authority of the government, social unrest, and the people's hardships led to the collapse of imperial rule. The big change eventually came. In January of the year 9 AD, Wang Mang formally ascended the throne and established the Xin dynasty in a successful coup. Wang Mang's ascension was supported by the vast majority of the people, having become their last hope as the Han dynasty collapsed around them. In the first year of the new dynasty, Wang Mang promulgated a famous and controversial decree on land redistribution. In the edict, Wang Mang analyzed the shortcomings of the land system up to that point.
汉王朝曾经减轻过田租，最低的时候30税1，而今天地主豪强欺凌百姓，强占政府给予百姓的土地，向百姓收租，税收高达1时税5。平民百姓终年在土地上耕耘，所得的收入连自己也养不活，而有钱人将好粮食喂狗和马。 骄横且品行不端，没钱的人连酒糟糠皮也吃不上，因为贫穷而犯法作乱。
He proposed the world's fairest land allocation system.
现今，将天下所有的田地都更名为王田，所有人不得买卖田地。 男丁不过8口的家庭，而家中的土地又超过900亩的，要将家里的田地分给同姓的亲族或者邻居和乡民。
Couriers were sent from the capital to every corner of the empire to inform the people of the government's land reform measures.
又要改革，但是外戚又阻挠， 啊，而且外戚的阻挠的势力很大，不搬开这个绊脚石，改革没有办法推进的。哎，那么历史在这个时候创造了王莽这么一号人物啊，他既是外戚，同时他就是儒生的领袖，儒学士大夫的领袖啊，所以他来领导改革啊，所以我们说王莽这个人物，王莽的改制啊，都是当时那股这个突谷改制的强大社会思潮的一个产物。
The Qin dynasty considered the private buying and selling of land as the source of inequality, and that the policy of privatization of land which had taken place in the previous 200 years was wrong. The government now implemented nationalization, which meant that all land belonged to the state. The authorities believed that if each married couple had 6.66 hectares of land, every citizen had land. And if the government took only 1/30 of their harvest as tax, then the people would be content and there would be peace throughout the empire. Traditionally, China was an agricultural country that relied on revenue from the land. The agriculture tax was the material basis for maintaining the country's political and social life. Wang Mang's land redistribution system guaranteed that the people owned the land and that the government collected taxes directly from the people. It also guaranteed that people would not be exploited by landlords. This was, therefore, a utopian-style political system. "2,000 years ago, the Qin dynasty would not have been aware of the great changes that had taken place since the start of the Han dynasty. The greatest change was its population. In the year 2 AD, the government conducted China's first census. China's population was registered as 59,594,978. At a time when horses were the only means of transport, a census would certainly have been a monumental undertaking. The population had increased almost sixfold from 10 million at the end of the Warring States period. However, in the intervening 200 years, the total area of farmland in China had only barely increased. Wang Mang's temperament was more like that of a scholar than an emperor, and the land redistribution system naturally displeased government bureaucrats. For landlords, the various decrees banning the buying and selling of land restricted their ability to make money. As for landless peasants, the promise of free land was very tempting. But who was going to give them this land? The good intentions of the land reforms simply did not tally with real life. As a result, Wang Mang's policies upset every level of society. It was only a matter of time before it fell.
就是理想主义的一种追求。和汉末，也就是说他王蒙新朝的那种政治现实啊，社会现实，中间隔了一条不可逾越的鸿沟。你到底定位在哪里？你自己定位，你依靠谁来改革？依靠谁来改革？你要服侍谁的对象啊？服侍是谁？毛泽东讲过，谁是我们敌人，谁是我们朋友，这是革命的首要问题。你的改革，你的有个集团，你不是单枪匹马。
The following year, the ferocious Yellow River overflowed its banks, flowing across Shandong province, foregoing its former course in Tianjin. And records note that 1/5 of the population was killed as a result. Those who survived the floods became refugees. Looting was rampant, and many people took the law into their own hands. Eventually, they united to form an army, and they applied red paint to their foreheads to distinguish themselves from government troops. They were called the Red Eyebrows. The natural disaster was the start of the collapse of the Qin dynasty. Within a few years, the uprising had toppled the empire. The government had shown it was unable to resolve the land issues left over from the previous administration, much less the polarization of rich and poor. Its failures were simply a continuation of the failures of the Han Empire. In his dealings with foreign powers, Wang Mang relied on his Confucian learning to determine his policies. Wang Mang believed the Xiongnu chiefs had not conformed to proper etiquette, and he alienated himself. This intensified the conflict between the two sides. Mang's troops fought frequent battles with the Xiongnu as well as a war with the Wang rebel army, and it eventually lost. In October of the year 23 AD, the Red Eyebrows took Chang'an. The Book of Han says that Wang Mang wore court dress as he quietly waited for his final moment. With him in court were more than 1,000 officials willing to give their lives for the emperor. During the subsequent fighting, a merchant called Du Wu killed Wang Mang with his sword. Wang Mang's body was then hung up in the street, and locals came out to hit his corpse and vent their anger. The angry mob had already forgotten that just over 10 years before they had taken to the streets to voice their fanatical support for the saint. They now blamed him for all their misfortunes, and it seemed to them that his death would put an end to all their misery. Now, let's look back and re-examine the course of the Han dynasty. In its early days, the government granted land to the people. This was the first time in Chinese history farmers owned their own land. The government kept taxes low to ease the people's burden, and the government also allowed the people to develop the private economy. With policy support, the people's enthusiasm for production reached an unprecedented level. People accumulated great wealth. By about 100 BC, the Han dynasty experienced a period of great strength. The Han was the second dynasty to unify China. Apart from the short-lived Qin dynasty, it had almost nothing to emulate in terms of exercising state functions. One of the functions of the state was to maintain social order and mitigate class conflicts in order to safeguard the interests of society as a whole. But at the same time, as an empire, the state became a special interest group that relied on state power to wantonly plunder society. In its final days, the over-exploitation of society by the authorities led to the collapse of social order. In the course of developing a free economy, the private buying and selling of land was another factor in the dynasty's downfall. The foundations of China's peasant economy were extremely weak. Peasants often faced bankruptcy, which meant the wave of land acquisitions could not be contained. The government's inability to stop this led to the polarization of rich and poor in society. While bureaucrats and landlords owned vast swathes of land, the poor could not afford to put roofs over their heads or clothes on their bodies. As peasants lost their land, they were reduced to begging, which ultimately led to repeated rioting. With widespread calls for social reform, Wang Meng's ascent to power was a reflection of the people's aspirations. Wang Meng's most important policy was his attempt to return all of the land to the state and use state power to share wealth equally. But due to the check and balance of various interest groups, he was unable to implement his reforms. The empire fell into a paradox in which it needed a bureaucratic system to govern the country, but it did not have the necessary means to stop bureaucratic interest groups from plundering the nation's wealth. Allowing land transactions and encouraging competition would only lead to land acquisitions and social polarization. But returning land to the state and sharing wealth equally would go against people's competitive nature, and it was too good to be true. It was the first time in history a Chinese government was faced with such situations. They went out of their way to make it work, but failed in the end. It wasn't the first time this had happened, and it wasn't going to be the last either. Over the following 2,000 years, not even the greatest dynasties were able to escape the fate of the Great Han.